Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Morgenthaler.
And I'm Terry Combs with Equipment Zone.
We're here today to have another great webinar. This is about the new printing index that we've come up with.
Yeah, Jeff, as you well know, we get questions at every single trade show. We get questions all the time from our, folks we're talking to on the phone, and certainly during these webinars, and people saying, why do my shirts look like the shirts at trade shows? And further than that, I wrote an article a few years ago entitled just that: why don't my shirts look like shirts at the trade shows? And there was even a situation where somebody came up to the trade show booth and said, well, my shirts, I can't get prints like that. And I said, didn't you see an F2100? Well, yeah. And didn't we just print your file? Well, yeah. Well, then, yes, you can get prints like that, but there are steps involved in the process, Jeff.
Yeah, that's right. And, now that we're not doing trade shows anymore, a lot of those shirts that you're comparing to, or that our clients are comparing to, are sample shirts that we'll send out to people, and then they will have those in front of them and they'll print out their own files, and maybe they don't look quite as good. So we've come up with this great recipe. We call it an index. And the reason it's an index is because there's several different variations of each step that can affect the way that your print turns out. And so, oh, there's a great picture of us back in the day when we used to do trade shows. It seems like forever, Terry.
It does seem like forever. It's been a year, Jeff, just about. I mean, the last show we did was that show in Irving that we were talking about before we went on the air. And and that was only one day because they sent us all home after one day of the show. But yeah, that's Jeff, it's not just one thing, because people come and talk to us about, but I got the shirt you told me to get and I still have an issue. But that's why we have the index, because there are different variables that we have to address, and we have to address all of those different variables, and thus the index. And Jeff, it wasn't just you and me and the other sales folks getting together. We kind of came together and talked about the questions that we're going to deal with, but then we got with the Equipment Zone technicians and said, okay, what's the low end of this, and what's the high end? What's the ideal end? What's the 50-point level to get that perfect print, and therefore the index?
All right, perfect. Well, I was thinking about this the other day, and we'll get started here with this index, but this may just be the most important webinar we've ever done, Terry, because this is going to give everybody the recipe for getting the best prints possible. All right, well, let's get started with number one. Jay will advance this slide for us. And let's just start at the very beginning. You've probably heard the term garbage in, garbage out. I hate saying it that way. I'd rather say quality in, quality out, right?
Right.
Well, it starts with graphics. If you don't have a high quality graphic, if you go on to Google Images and you think you found something that looks pretty good, but it's small on that computer and it looks good on the computer screen, but when you download it, it's 72 DPI and it's 1 inch by 1 inch. I promise you that's not going to print well. And so when you look at this index here and you look at graphics, the very first thing you see on here is a 72 DPI thumbnail. Can it print? Yes, but it's going to get a number 2.
We could duplicate that really, really bad file perfectly.
That's right. Because what you're going to do is you're going to enlarge that in your print software, right? And all you're doing is you are just spreading out those pixels, and then the software compensates in between those pixels with more pixels. And that's what you see. People call it pixelated or stair-steppy. And that's the low end of this index. All right, as we move up, obviously a higher DPI is going to give you a better print. And here's a great example that Jay just put up on the screen for us, one of low resolution and high resolution. On On the one side with the low resolution, you can see that's just, now maybe you like that. I don't know. Maybe that's art for you. Most people want the high resolution, but that's what we're talking about when we say pixelated or stair-steppy. So if we could go back, Jay, to that graphic or to the slide for graphics, I just want to go through that that bar graph a little bit more. Now, if we get into the middle at 150 DPI at 10 inches by 10 inches, Terry, if that's the size of your graphic, 10 inches by 10 inches, you're going to get a pretty good graphic. That's going to be passable in a lot of situations, right?
Sure.
Now, if that's all the client has and that's what they give you and they're happy with it, that's fine. You can print that and you can make money. That's what we call in the good range. We move up into vector artwork. Now this is a little tricky as we talk about vector artwork, because when you work in vector, you're going to design an RGB, but you're going to export that as a PNG file. Okay. And you're going to export that at the proper size and at 300 DPI, which will then take you up into the highest range and give you the best score for graphics. So as we move through this, I keep talking about scores or points. You see those numbers along the top. The more of these that you can add up, the higher that your print is going to have a higher score, and that's what we're aiming for. So yeah, that's graphics. Did I miss anything there, Terry?
Well, just that 300 DPI is our ideal.
Yeah, 300 DPI, two size would be a 10. And people might ask, well, why not go higher if higher DPI is better? Because once you get beyond 300 DPI, you're not really going to be able to add much more quality to that print. And all you're going to do is create a larger file size that is going to take longer to process and slow down your production time.
Yeah, in fact, the Garment Creator software is going to take that file and bring it down to 300 DPI anyway if you try to load something larger. And in reality, let's be honest, we're printing on fabric, we're printing on a t-shirt. So anything above 300 DPI, you're not going to be able to see anyway.
Right.
So, okay, so our second index category, and Jay, if you'll pop that up on the screen here for us. Is your substrate. And with most garment decorating, like with screen printing, or maybe you're doing heat transfer vinyl, or maybe you're doing embroidery or transfers, for the most part, and this is not 100%, but for the most part, it doesn't really matter what you're printing on. But with direct to garment printing, the substrate you're printing on is going to have a huge effect on how that print looks in the end. On the low end is 100% polyester. Now, let me talk about this for just a second. There are polyester pre-treats available. There are tricks to do. I mean, when we print on polyester, we don't use any special pre-treat. We use the regular Epson pre-treat for dark garments. But here's what we do. We pre-treat the shirt. This is for a color polyester shirt. We dry it. We pre-treat it again. We dry it. We print it like a normal dark shirt. Then we need to cure it. But here's the problem with polyester for anybody, screen printers, anybody out there who's decorating polyester. It's called dye migration, which means that as the dye raises in temperature, because we need to cure it about 338 degrees. As that temperature increases, the dye in the garment starts migrating into the ink. And so a red 100% polyester shirt with a white print, that print, by the time you're done curing, it's going to turn pink. So what do? We cut the temperature back to 275 degrees for 45 seconds. That's not enough to cure the shirt. We do it again, 275 degrees for 45 seconds. Not enough to cure the shirt. We do it a third time. By then, we can get an acceptable print, but was it worth it? And so, here's the bottom line. All different decoration methods, there's a better way to use that technology and a worse way to use it. The best way to use this technology is by printing on a substrate that it's really meant to be printed on. So, And we certainly have customers that say, well, I need 50-50. I print for elementary and middle schools, and moms love those 50-50 shirts because they don't wrinkle. You pull them out of the wash and you're good to go. Can you make it work? You can. You could pre-treat it, dry it, pre-treat it a second time, dry it, and get an acceptable print, but not ideal. Some tri-blends, depending on the manufacturer, work better than others. We've gotten some really good prints with, say, All Made Apparel. 100% cotton. We're moving up the scale here. Number 8, 100% cotton. That's going to be a decent print. For the absolute best print, we're going to use 100% ring spun combed cotton. And we have a great slide here, thanks to the folks at Bella Canvas for publishing this. So on the left is regular cotton, and on the right is 100% combed ring spun cotton. So you can see now the print there is a screen print, but you can get the idea. And the reason here is you're going to have a really smooth, tight surface. What a lot of people don't realize about ring spun cotton is it's not that so much that it's ring spun, but it's the fact that they use thinner threads to make ring spun cotton than they do to make open end cotton. So what does that mean to us? That means a tighter weave. That means a smoother surface. And so a rough texture on a shirt is going to be an optical illusion that's going to make it look like we don't have as bright an image as we do on 100% ring spun cotton. So now when you go to a trade show, if you ever go to a trade show again, you're going to walk around and every manufacturer, every reseller of any brand of direct-to-garment printers, they're all going to be using the same shirts. Why is that? Because there are certain shirts where we can get the absolute best possible print. So that is the subject of substrate.
Well said, Terry. I just wanted to point out that most people I've talked to that have tried to DTG print on 50-50 hate it. They don't like to do it. I would say don't try it. If you have a client that is really pushing you for a 50-50 shirt, talk them into a 60-40. 60-40s from Cotton Heritage print really well, and tri-blends print really good. I prefer the tri-blends. I love the way they feel. They're very soft, and the prints hold up really good on them. So
exactly,
I just
right.
Throw that out there.
The higher cotton content, the better.
Yep. All right, Jay, let's go on to the third part of our index. All right, pre-treat. Now, this is always a popular topic, isn't it, Terry?
It is indeed, because almost everybody does it wrong.
Well, there's a way to not do it wrong, and we're going to talk about that. Let's talk about the way to do it wrong, which is the first item on here, and that's the paint roller. I remember doing this method a very long time ago when direct-to-garment printing first came out. We were actually in trade shows in a booth, and we were rolling this stuff on t-shirts. And let me tell you, it was messy, it was inconsistent, and when people are watching you and you're trying to put on a demonstration and that shirt's kind of moving around as that paint roller's moving around on there, it's a disaster.
And Jeff, still today, there are people demonstrating that method. So
yeah, there's that's still out there on the internet, right? It's out there because it was out there in the beginning, and it just, once it's on the internet, Terry, guess what? It never goes away.
Right.
So there's videos that to do that, and there's some people who still say this is the preferred method. Well, it's not. It's not the preferred method. I'm telling everybody right now listening, don't waste your time, because when you use this, it's inconsistent, it's messy, and it's super wasteful. Because guess where a lot of that pre-treat ends up? Not on the shirt. It's all over the tray and all sucked up into that sponge. So it gets very expensive. Now, the next item over, Jay, if we could go back to that slide, is, I think it was the spray-on method. Now, I talked to a lot of people, Terry, that don't quite have all the funds to get to the high end of this index and purchase a pre-treat machine. So they ask me, well, what can I do if I can't afford a pre-treat machine? On the one side, I don't know if it's on the right or the left for people watching. For me, it's on my right, is the roll-on method. Okay, that's the one I'm saying don't do. The one on the left is a Power Wagner sprayer, and you put your shirt up on a board and you spray it. This is probably the most recommended method if you do not have a pre-treat machine. Okay. Um, the reason this is recommended is because you're actually spraying that across the shirt, and you're putting down a nice mist, and you're just going to be a little more consistent and accurate than you are with that roller. There's videos out on the internet on how to do this, and if you decide to go this way, our techs will show you how to do that. But again, it could be inconsistent, because guess how much pre-treat is actually hitting your shirt? It's all dependent upon how fast your hand is moving back and forth, right? So you might have too little, or you might have too much. If you just finished a cup of coffee, maybe your hand's moving really fast. If you're still been doing it for a while, maybe it's moving a little slower.
And you know, Jeff, any any variation in the amount you lay down, you will see in the print. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about this.
Yeah, if you miss a spot, or if it's a little low in one area, you'll notice in your print that that's just missing in your print.
Exactly.
So Jay just put a picture up here of a pre-treat machine. This is one that we're a little partial to, Terry, because, well, we make it. We make it at our shop in New Jersey. This is the Speed Treater TX. What we love about it is that it's fully contained, so it's not messy. When you spray pre-treat, it mists out into the air. So if you're hand spraying, you cannot do that in the same room as your printer unless you're very far away, because you don't want that mist to get into your print heads and into your printer. Well, with the Speed Treater, it's fully contained cabinet, so there's no misting out. When you set the dial to the right speed, it's going to put down the right amount consistently every time. And it only takes 6 seconds, right? So no mess,
Yeah.
consistent, fast, and efficient. We've designed that to be super easy to maintain, to clean at the end of the day. Just cycle some distilled water through it, pull out this the spray nozzle, and clean it, and you're good to go. So we have a couple of other items on here. Pressurized pump sprayer. Those are good for doing like small areas, maybe a left chest. The open pre-treat machine, that just goes back to the pre-treat being able to mist out into the air. And so at the high end, you have the closed cabinet pre-treat machine. And there's one more thing that we don't have listed here. I might just throw this out, Terry, is that there's one company I'm aware of that actually makes shirts already pre-treated. And that's our RTP Apparel.
Correct.
I got it correctly. And those work good. You just have to buy enough to get the price down to make it, worth it. So.
And Jeff, the thing about that is, and the minute you say all I'm going to do is RTP apparel shirts, and you're right, they print very, very well. But the problem is the very next customer that walks in your door is going to say, well, I want Tennessee orange. And you say, well, here's orange. And they're going to go, well, that's not Tennessee orange. That's not Texas orange. Right. And guess what? There's never going to be Tennessee orange. There's never going to be Texas orange. There's never going to be North Carolina blue. You still have to pre-treat shirts.
And as soon as you have a job that requires 200 or 300 shirts, guess what? Those are going to be on back order. So I think that's a good assist, but you still want that closed cabinet pre-treat, because you just can't be 100% reliable on the pre-treated shirts.
Hey Jeff, can I add one more thing about pre-treating? You mentioned the internet a couple of times. If you can pick one thing that you don't go to the internet to learn, it's pre-treating, because there is so much bad information out there about pre-treating. Most people use too much. You see a lot of things where you pre-treat the shirt and then you take a paintbrush, or you take a roller, you take a squeegee. All of those are Band-Aids. Those are Band-Aids because you didn't get an even lay down of pre-treat. So you're adding a step to make it work. All of those extra things you don't have to do.
Yeah. Hey, a couple of quick questions. I just want to address these because it's specific to pre-treating. Somebody asked how much our pre-treat machine costs. It's $32.95 plus shipping right now. We have it on sale. And let's see. The cost to pre-treat a shirt, if you pre-treat the whole front of a shirt, you're looking at about 25 cents. So a typical 10 by 12 is going to be around 10 cents in pre-treat.
Right, exactly.
I wanted to get a couple of those quick ones in.
Perfect.
We'll answer more questions at the end of the webinar, by the way. Yep.
Okay, Jay, what the next category we have of our 5 categories? That was quite a bit of anticipation there. We want to talk about this. This basically is more than printing its environment. Again, you know, you can operate a screen printing business out of your basement, out of your garage. You can operate a cut vinyl business out of your dining room. You can embroider in a second bedroom. With direct-to-garment printing, these printers are sensitive to the environment, so you really need to take special care with this. Obviously, a dusty, dirty location. You know, I'm a longtime screen printer, and every time somebody shakes the shirt out, well, guess what? Fuzz and lint goes up into the air, and it doesn't really impact us when I'm pulling or pushing a squeegee, but fuzz and lint getting inside of my direct-to-garment printer, that can cause some issues, maybe some blockage of the print head, things like that, or that fuzz getting on the print head as it travels, and all of a sudden you've got little black streaks and you can't figure out what it is. You're dragging that fuzz back and forth on your print head. So you want to have a good environment. Probably the biggest thing about your environment, though, and people seem to ignore this, ideally you don't want to have a direct-to-garment printer out on your big embroidery floor, or out on your screen printing floor, out there in the warehouse, because you need to maintain an office type environment, which means, and if you're comfortable with the temperature in the room, your printer's probably fine too, but much more important is humidity. All direct-to-garment printers need at least 40% humidity in the room all the time. When you go online, here we are again, when you go online and somebody goes, well, I love XYZ printer, but it goes through these automatic head cleanings every 45 minutes. Well, they're complaining about that printer doing these head cleanings because it's using ink. Well, what's the real culprit? It is humidity. I will guarantee you every one of those people that post that their printer goes through extra head cleanings does not have a proper environment for that printer, because if you have less than 40% humidity, and people say, I've got 25% humidity in my shop, but I don't have any head clogging, so I'm all good. That's not correct, because here's what happens. A print head in an environment lower than 40% humidity will start to overheat. And how do you cool a print head? You pump water through it. Where do you get the water? Your water-based ink. And so when that print head starts to overheat, it will stop and do a head cleaning. And the reason it does that is to cool down the print head. If you have your environment at 40+% humidity 24 hours a day, then it's just going to do its regularly scheduled cleaning, which is about on an Epson printer about every 6 hours. And then you don't have to worry about it. But it's critically important to have that proper environment for your printer. Now, you know, then people say, well, but I want to take it to a car show, or I want to take it to an event. You can still do that. You can take it out of its environment and take it, you know, to the art fair on Saturday and Sunday downtown, put up a tent and be printing shirts all day long. All you want to do is get that printer back into its proper environment as quickly as you can. But, you know, look at us at trade shows. We certainly don't have the proper environment. For us at trade shows, we're, you know, if it's in Atlantic City in April, we're in there in coats and gloves and hats setting up, because they don't turn the heat on for all of us setting up that booth. And then when about an hour before all the attendees come in, then the heat goes on and everything's hunky-dory, but there's no control over the environment when you do that. So, you know, there's just a few things that you need to do. These machines are very, very easy to maintain. Make sure that you shake the white ink cartridges every morning. Doesn't matter what machine you have. You want to circulate that titanium dioxide so that it's suspended in the ink. you want to do a nozzle check, and that's what Jay has up on the screen here right now. That nozzle check is just going to tell you that all the nozzles are firing properly. And if you look on the screen there, there's 8 boxes with white, and on the right hand side at the very top, there's one little nozzle that isn't firing, one little part of the nozzle not firing. Now, am I going to stop and clean for that? I'm not. But at least on the Epson printer, I can just clean the white, or I can just clean one, 2 sets of 2 colors, and I don't have to clean the entire head if I do a nozzle check. And we recommend you do a nozzle check every single morning. It just takes a minute or two. We actually put a strip of box sealing tape on the platen and actually do the nozzle check right on the tape and just take the tape off. And that keeps you from having to clean off the platen or anything like that. And just take a look at it. And if everything's firing properly, off you go. But again, the maintenance isn't very complicated, but you need to do it. You need to make sure, and I can't emphasize this enough. Make sure, go out and buy a hygrometer, and you can go to Amazon or Skynet, same thing. And for any Terminator viewers out there, but you can go to Amazon and get a hygrometer for about $10. And what hygrometer is just going to tell you what your humidity is in your room. I think I paid $8.95 for mine. And it not only tells me the temperature, and the humidity level, but it's going to tell me the average humidity for the last 24 hours. So something like that, you need to have. If you don't have it in your shop, if you call for service, any company, if you call for service, the first question they're going to ask you is, what's the humidity level in your room? So go out and buy a hygrometer, and you'll be able to tell. Get that room above 40%. We are all working in the office here in Tempe, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, and our average humidity here is 10%. But we have just a humidifier in a very large room, our showroom, and it keeps that humidity level at 45% around the clock. So that's the environment is critically important.
We hit 10% humidity. I think it's rained once in the last 8 months, Terry. It's been
That's right.
extremely dry. But just to brag a little bit about that printer here in Arizona, we are insanely dry this past 12 months. That printer is going on almost 4 years. Is that right?
Right.
That we've had it, and we've never replaced the print head. And there are times when we've left it off for a couple of weeks at a time. So we're just I'll just leave it at that. And there might be some people here who don't have Epsons, but I just wanted to brag about it for a minute. All right, let's go on to our last topic here in the slide. Curing. Okay, so here's the final thing, and here's where I think a lot of people get frustrated, Terry, because they'll go through all these other things. They'll make sure they have the right shirts, that they had a good graphic, and they pre-treated properly, and then that print comes off the printer and it looks fantastic. And then they cure it, and it looks a little dull to them, right? Like it loses a little bit of its luster or color or whatever. And I think this is where some people fail to cure properly. So if we could go back to that slide, Jay, and I'll just go through it. Okay, so we're talking about working here first with a heat press. If your temperature is too low, you're going to have issues, because that means that you're not going to properly cure your print, and when it goes to be washed, it could wash out. Okay. The next item over here is hover, then cure with pressure. So you have a couple of things that you need to watch. You need to make sure that you have consistent temperature across your entire heat press, and then you need to have the proper pressure. The proper pressure on a heat press is light. You don't want to have too high pressure. Okay. Now, why would it say hover then cure? If you put down a heavy white underbase and that ink isn't fully dry before the CMYK goes on it, then some of that white ink might pop through. So the hover will help dry that a little bit. Now, there's been a lot of discussion between the techs and the salespeople on whether or not you should hover. What hovering does is help dry that print a little bit before you apply the pressure. You can achieve that same drying by just laying the shirt out on a table. When you hover press it, what you're going to do is tie up that heat press and slow down your production.
Right.
So we recommend that maybe you have, if you're going to dry those shirts a little bit before you press them, have a long table set up and just lay your shirts out and just then come back and heat press them. Your heat press needs to be used for heat pressing those shirts when they come off the pre-treater, and then you're printing, and then you can pull a shirt out of your line of shirts that are drying and then heat press, and you'll get a nice production flow going. Professional heat gun. We actually use a professional heat gun when curing or drying hats and shoes. You could also do this for a left chest, but then you don't quite have the pressure. So I still would say on a t-shirt, you should always put it under a heat press. But on shoes and hats, you can use that gun because they're not going to be going through the wash like a t-shirt does, right? You're not taking your shoes off every time you wear them and throw them in the wash, or your hat. And so they're not getting that abuse in the wash machine and the dryer. All right. And then on the next item, Jay, moving through our slide, a couple of pictures of a heat press and the pre-treater. So a craft heat press, I've actually been talking to a couple of people about this who have gotten cheap heat presses off of Amazon. And they do this because maybe they just don't have all the funds for a professional heat press like the Geo Night up front. So they get these, and maybe that helps get them started, but they'll quickly learn that they'll have inconsistent heat across the heating element. They won't have consistent pressure. I just had that pressure conversation with somebody yesterday. And that's why when it comes to heat presses, you get what you pay for. If you're buying cheap, then you're going to have issues. That heat press might last, 6 months if you're lucky. But even from the get-go, you might have inconsistencies. On the high end, the 10, of all the categories that you should be at a 10, it should be in the curing process. You should have a professional heat press and or a conveyor dryer. With the professional heat press, you're going to have consistency. You're going to have a heat press that's going to last. The heating elements on the Geo Night are lifetime warranty on that. So it's going to last. Here we have a couple of pictures of the conveyor dryer. Sorry, Jay, got you bouncing back and forth. The conveyor dryers, we sell the Vastex conveyor dryers. You need to make sure your conveyor dryer is set up for water-based inks. And these little reds will actually do both plastisol and water-based. So they're great if you have a shop that's doing both. But this is great because after you print, you can just lay your shirt on that and it'll drop into a box on the other side, and you're off working on the next part of your production process. You can also run your pre-treated shirts through those conveyor dryers. Just make sure that you tap them with the heat press to flatten the fibers before you print on them.
Jeff, another thing, speaking of curing, is a lot of folks say, well, what's the temperature and time for curing my pre-treat? Well, obviously we're not curing pre-treat. All we're doing is drying the pre-treat. So, the time and temperature is up to you. How much pre-treat did you lay on that shirt? And normally we say use medium to heavy pressure as well, just to lay the fibers down. But all we're really doing is evaporating the water out of that shirt. So the time and temperature is not critical at all. Just make sure the shirt's dry.
Yeah, perfect. And that kind of brings us to the end of the index, but I just want to point out to, we have this scale, we have a scale here in this index from 2 to 10. And obviously if you had all 10s in your index, that's perfect. But I just want to point out that, sometimes when we're striving for perfection, that can get in the way of profits. I go back to what I was saying about graphics, Terry, that if your client gives you a file and they say, this is fine, and you print it, don't spend a lot of time trying to get them to send you a perfect file. if they're happy with what they've given you and they like the sample that you get, if they say, yeah, that's good, then go. Don't go back to them. Oh, no, I can't do this. I need it to be 300 DPI. It can't be 150 when they've said it's fine. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. And it depends on your customer. You have to be realistic about the customer. If grandma comes in and gives you a less than perfect picture off of her phone of the 4 grandkids under the Christmas tree, you're going to say, gosh, if I just had a better file, I could make a better picture. But you hand her the shirt and there's a tear running down her cheek. So it matters who you're selling to, and how critical you're going to be. And Jeff, this, we are all our worst enemies when it comes to the perfection, because our customer, they're probably going to be happy with a lot of things that you and I would say, let's do it again.
Right. Yeah, I'm that way. And I think that's why I don't have my own t-shirt shop.
Nothing would ever go out.
Focused on perfection, that would get in the way of profits. But this index is just a great tool for you to gauge and to help solve that issue. If you felt like, hey, my prints didn't turn out quite as good as the sample prints or the trade show shirt that I saw, here's some things that you can look at to identify and improve on.
Well, Jeff, here's what I say to students in my screen printing classes. It's just a t-shirt. Nobody dies.
I think you need to put that on a t-shirt.
I think I should. How could I do such a thing?
All right. So I think we're gonna bring Jay in here and go through a few questions.
Yeah, and Jay's showing us some samples of a really good quality print. It's printed on a Cotton Heritage 100% cotton shirt with a very, very bright image. This is now I'm trying to remember if this art is from Great Dane or we got it elsewhere, but yeah, a beautiful print, and it's just a 300 DPI file.
Hi, Jay.
Indeed. Yeah. Hey guys, you guys did a wonderful job. Fantastic. I'm going to turn my scary video on here so I can say hi to everybody.
Hey, Jay.
Hey guys.
You're wearing a hat today.
Imagine that. Wearing a hat. You did a wonderful job with the index, and I hope that everybody listening, I'm sure they got some practical advice, some ideas on where they could potentially improve. And I think as we've talked so many times about this, it's all of the ingredients adding up. And exactly. You did a wonderful job building on the foundation and the base, and one step builds to the next and builds to the next. And so I was really excited to see the comments and the feedback. So far, so good, by the way, and just wanted to share a couple of these photos so that people could see this is what we mean. And we're biased a little bit, obviously, but we're also proud. And I think that hopefully is what people can hear in our tone and in our message, is that we feel lucky to be surrounded with some of the pioneers of DTG printing, and we've gone through several evolutions and we've taken our lumps. I was there with Jeff when we were doing that paint roller 10 years ago, and he's right. It was terrible.
Jerry, I think you were there too.
Oh, I was there indeed. I think I might have sold you guys those printers.
We won't talk about that, but the good news is this too. We want to wrap up on this, and then Jeff, you can also take a peek at some of the comments and some of the questions that we can address. But what I really also wanted to do is invite people or remind them that there's a place to get more information. So what we can share today is the fact that we do have a private Facebook group. We're just knocking on the door of 1,000 guests. We limit this to the US. You do not have to be an Equipment Zone customer. We love it when we do have Equipment Zone customers in there, but I'm just making sure that everybody knows. If there's somebody from Sweden listening today, it's not that we're excluding you. It's just that because of the time zone differences and sometimes the language challenges, it's best for us to just limit this group to the US. We might make an exception to the rule down the road. We've gotten some feedback on that, but for now, we're limiting it to the folks here in the US.
So I will tell you that Gusta in Sweden is a regular weekly listener to my podcast, Two Regular Guys. So,
well, he got a special shout out before you came on too. So we're getting our international audience Love there. But in addition to the Facebook group, it's free. You just basically just ask requests to become a member. And then typically inside of 48 hours, often less, we say yes. The other place to go is where this video will be, which is on our YouTube channel, probably in the next 24 to 48 hours. Please subscribe to our channel. You can also click on the little bell over there to the right. What that does is it gives you an indication or notification that we've posted a new video. We typically do something once a week, sometimes more often. We just came off the heels of our DTG Printing Academy. That training academy was wildly popular, and all of those videos are now up. So you might want to go over there and check those out. And then last and certainly not least is the contact info on where people can get a hold of you great folks, specifically talking about Terry and Jeff, but also Amy and others. If you need to reach us at Equipment Zone, this is where you can find us. So with having said that, Jeff, I am
Yes.
going to kind of kick it back to you so that we can stop sharing on this for a minute and see if there were any questions that you or Terry wanted to, elaborate or expand on.
Yeah, let me ask a question to you, Terry. This is from Robert Mitchell. Can you do a reverse print on film and then press?
No, can you basically create a transfer or this new direct to film process? Doesn't work with a direct to garment printer, direct to garment inks.
Okay. Yeah, remember this ink is designed to bond with natural fiber. So when you put it on that film, it's just water-based. It's going to make a mess. Pete Jimenez, how often do you change filter and tips on a speed treater? Well, I'll answer that. So there's no set time on that. It's you'll notice maybe when you pre-treat, if you see a little bit of dripping or splotches come out on a shirt, that you need to pull those out and clean them. Pre-treat can be kind of sticky and can clog those up. But if you're doing your regular maintenance, you shouldn't have to do that very often. And those parts aren't terribly expensive. This is an interesting comment from Bob McGinn. Sanmar now has pre-treated t-shirts. Have you seen those yet, Terry?
I have. I can't say.
Jake
has something to say about that.
Yes.
There.
Hey, pick me. Yes, they do. They're not available yet. They are in their catalog, and I'll be careful with what I say because they've asked me to be. They did pick us early on in this to be one of their testers, and we did some testing. It was an honor for us to be, picked, selected, however you want to say that. But their team is chomping at the bit to produce these. They're really working hard, as are other vendors. So it would not surprise me if throughout the course of 2021, we start to see that these are available. But to my knowledge, they are not ready for purchase. They've sent us their finals and asked us to do some social media prints. They're sitting over there by Roy. So we'll let you know how those final pre-treated shirts from Sanmar work.
As soon as Sanmar says, you can talk about it.
Yes.
Sounds like a future webinar.
Yeah.
Randy Morris, is this being recorded for watching later? Yes. Jay mentioned that would be posted onto our YouTube page. Dean, I have been putting through the conveyor dryer, then the heat press. Anything to look out for? I suppose you're talking about the pre-treat. No, if you're pre-treating your shirts and they're going through the conveyor dryer, just before you print, tap it with that heat press and make sure that it's dry. And you probably want to hit it for about 10 seconds. Just make sure those fibers are flat.
Jimmy Ruiz asked, do you press after the conveyor dryer with a heat press for a softer hand? Not necessary. Most people, and someone also asked, by the way, dryer versus heat press pros and cons. So kind of in the same category. Usually what we see is this. If you have one printer, you're probably going to use a heat press the whole time. And the end result, the end washability is going to be the same. Once you start getting 2, 3, 4 machines, then you're probably going to go to a conveyor dryer. Not so much because it's better or worse, but because of efficiency. Because once you start getting multiple machines, you start getting that heat press becomes a bottleneck for you. There's a local printer. Once he got his 4th printer, he went to a Vastex conveyor dryer, And now he has 2 Vastex conveyor dryers with his multiple direct-to-garment printers.
All right. Rick Davis, I am a big kid and I like to step in puddles. Will the ink have issues if the sneakers get wet often? I haven't actually tested that, Rick. Appreciate you being a frequent flyer of our webinars.
Well,
Well,
you know, Jeff,
that.
and he's probably referring to the fact that we're just using a heat gun to cure them. But I do know people that have done hats and they've cured them with a heat gun and thrown them. Well, here's how you wash a hat. You put it in the dishwasher, you know, in the top rack. And the person that I talked to who tested it actually even put his in the washer and said that the print stayed on perfectly. So as long as you know, take about 30 seconds to dry that with a heat gun. And when we say a heat gun, we're talking about Ace Hardware heat gun for $19.95 for taking wallpaper off the wall. So
yeah,
it's inexpensive.
Why do you need pressure to cure versus no pressure with heat conveyor? So why did we talk about having contact with the heat press, but a conveyor dryer doesn't necessarily need that?
Well, would you like me to answer that?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Well, here's how heat presses work. Most heat presses are contact heat sources, which means like when you're hovering, it's not giving off very much heat. That's why Jeff said you could just put it on a table and get the same effect. By contact heat source, that means that when it's touching the substrate, when it's touching the shirt, is the only time it's generating that 338 degrees. So it has to come in contact because that's the way heat presses work. And when we say pressure, Jeff's talking about light pressure, which means all you're doing is touching that garment with the heat press. By touching it, you're generating all that heat. Through a dryer, it's generating all that heat anyway. So I can see the confusion, but all we're doing is the lightest possible pressure to make sure that 338 degrees is going into that garment.
Okay. I think I'm going to move forward a little bit here because we're running a little long, Terry. If most sweatshirts and hoodies are 50-50, which brand would you recommend to improve the print? Any tips? Well, we actually sell hoodies on our website that print fantastic. And there's a few out there that what you're going to see in the marketplace more and more is that vendors are starting to make garments more direct-to-garment friendly as it just becomes a more popular way to decorate. You know, we live in a digital world and people want a more vibrant, higher resolution print on their garments. And so direct to garment is still it's becoming more and more popular. The past 12 months, we've seen a lot of people purchasing printers. So you're going to see vendors just create more and more garments, and there's a lot of sweatshirts out there that print great. So
well, and Jeff, a lot of those sweatshirts now, just like you're saying, the reason they are great for direct to garment is because they might be a blend on the inside, but on the face, it's 100% cotton. And yeah, there are a lot of 50-50 sweatshirts out there. You might have to spend a little bit more money to get the right one. An 80-20, 80% cotton, 20% polyester, it's going to cost more money, but it's going to give you a much better print. So, you know, when people call us up and say, I can't get a bright image on my hoodie, and it's red and I'm having issues with it, the first thing we ask is, well, you know, what's the fabric? And they say, well, Sanmar's having a sale. Well, that translates to it's a 50-50 and you don't want to tell me.
That's right. Hey, somebody said we should do a whole webinar on Pretreat, Jay. I think we have one of those coming up, right? Or you're working on a video with Roy?
We are working on a new Pretreat training webinar. There is at least one, and I think there might be two that I can remember already in our library on our YouTube channel. So you definitely could pick up some tips there for sure. And I did post in the chat that the All We Do Is or Just Hoods brand, which funny enough, that is a zippered hoodie was our did you guys see that when I popped it up there? That's why I did that, so that we could see the hoodie. That is All We Do Is brand or Just Hoods brand.
Well, and that's also printed on our exclusive hoodie platen that is only available at Equipment Zone. But the reason we could get that great print across that zipper is because there's a little slot that lifts out of that platen so that that zipper can fall down in it and get a really, really good print with fabric in the middle and the zipper in the middle.
100% correct. Well, I think you guys did an awesome job. The ultimate question was this, and you guys nailed it. And the index, I think, is going to be a great guide for the future. So I just want to thank you one more time and then let you guys wrap it up.
Yeah, I would just like to say there are a lot of questions that were very specific to something that you might be dealing with. Feel free to go to our website, and we have a new tech support page where you can put in your information and spell out exactly what your question is, what you need help with. And our support staff would be happy to give you a call and kind of go through. They're going to ask you questions that are going to pertain to that index that we just talked about and help identify where your issue is. But this has been great. Like I said at the beginning, Terry, I think this is one of the most important webinars we've done.
I agree with you 100%, Jeff, because it's not just one thing. You have to have all 5 categories covered to get that print. And guess what? You can get those exact same prints that you see at the trade shows every single day in your shop.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We appreciate your support, your help, your comments, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.
Thanks, everybody.